extremely important, my beloved brothers and sisters. I wanted to share this verse from the Quran with you. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون لهم البشرى في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. God, the Divine, says in the Quran, indeed, the allies of God, those who are protected, those who are in this relationship of wilaya with God. Because going above the clouds requires that Allah, the name, the ancient name for God, used by people in many different religions, not just Muslims, is more than just the object of your belief, that Allah is the object of your love. He's more than just a concept, because the reality is Allah is not a concept. Concepts are creations of our minds. And Allah is Al-Haq. He is the absolute truth in reality. That is the source of all that exists around us. Indeed, those who are allied, those who are protected by, those who are close to Allah, there is no fear upon them, nor do they grieve. There are those who had faith, and they were people of reverence, people of mindfulness of the presence of the Divine, as well as the commandments of the Divine. For them are glad tidings. For them is good news in the life of this lower world. Notice the word here is hayat ad-dunya. And this is the word in the Quran that describes the physical existence of this reality, of this bottle, of this cup, the microphone, anything that has length, width, breadth, or volume, that occupies time and space, is called, and it is in this most dense, most gross dimension, is called hayat ad-dunya, which literally means the lower world, because there are higher worlds. And cultivating positivity is about attaching yourself to the higher world and not the lower world. The word for the higher world in the Quran is Darul Akhirah, the supreme abode, the ultimate abode, the final, the everlasting abode. And it is called Dar because it is a place of residence. You don't leave. When you arrive there, you don't leave. But this world, this physical kingdom, is called Hayat ad-Dunya, the life of the lower world. Because it's just a life, it's just a phase. So what makes more sense? To be attached to something that will eventually come to an end, or to attach ourselves to that which is everlasting? While you're here, for them are glad tidings in the life of the lower world, wa fil akhirah, and in the supreme abode, and in the ultimate abode. Now, how do we raise our consciousness? How do we get to this positivity that I observed from Austin, and that this young man, showed me, not by teaching me, not by giving a lecture like this, just every day greeting me with a smile, just by me never hearing him say an ugly word about any situation he was in. And he was in some difficult situations. The way that we learn to do this in the Quran is by applying a number of very simple but significant practices to our lives. And we're only going to talk about 3 today, but I just want to lay all of them out so that you have a bird's eye view of how each and every one of us can enjoy this kind of life. Because when you live like this, when your feet are on the ground, but your heart is above the clouds, that's a beautiful life. That's a peaceful life. That is a life where even though the winds of tests and trials and tribulations are blowing around you at 200 miles per hour, you're in the eye of the hurricane. And there's nothing but calm and tranquility. So the first things we're going to talk about are the foundation. The foundation of this life of positivity is that we apply the rituals of prophetic living, the rituals of spiritual living, the key rituals with a new consciousness, with a new attitude. And how do we do this? It is by understanding that these rituals are not just meant to be acts that are performed, but that they are actual transformative tools. And now there are basically 5. And I'll just go over them very quickly because they're leading us up to the main theme we want to address and discuss tonight. Inshallah, God willing. So the first is the shahada, shahadatan. It is once the human being comes to the realization, either intellectually or spiritually, that there is only one indivisible, absolute, divine being, creator, that is unmatched and unlike any other thing in existence, and that being, that divine being, inspires special teachers that we call prophets and messengers to show us how to live a life that's in accord with our realization. We declare that. And that declaration takes us from a state of ingratitude to a state of what? Gratitude. From kufr to shukr in the Arabic language. From ingratitude to gratitude. And in order to cultivate a spiritual life, in order to cultivate a positive life, you must be in a state of gratitude and thankfulness. The next ritual, so just saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a great benefit. But if it stays on the tongue and it doesn't settle in the heart, and you don't awaken and you don't say it with thanks, with a knowledge that transforms you, then you deprive yourself of the greatest benefit of this statement, which is shukr, that you become a person who is thankful. And people who are thankful don't complain. Doesn't mean people who are not, it doesn't mean that they don't have trouble in their life. It doesn't mean that there are no problems in their life, but instead of complaining about them, they respond and remedy those problems. They address those problems from the present, not from a place of fear or grief. As I said in the verse, or as I recited in the verse, that Allah Ta'ala revealed, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. There is no fear upon them, nor do they grieve. Why are these 2 words mentioned here? Because it is fear and grief that prevent human beings from enjoying the present. Most human beings in the world, they wake up in the morning and they're either full of fear and anxiety about what the future holds, about the unknown. And sometimes we have fears that are irrational. We call them phobias. Some people are afraid of the dark. Some people are afraid of mice. Some people are afraid of death. Some are afraid of poverty. Some of us are afraid of criticism. What will they think of me? Some of us are afraid of success. There are people who are afraid of being successful because they know if they're successful, then now they have responsibilities. Or if they get successful, there are people that will be jealous of their success, and now they have to deal with envy. There are other people who are afraid of failure. And none of these actually has any reality. The person who's afraid of the dark, what is it that they're really afraid of? Because the dark doesn't hurt you, does it? The person who's afraid of the little spider, right, that's crawling in your house, what are you really afraid of? Because most spiders can't hurt you. But the sisters are laughing. They can't hurt you. So what is it you're afraid of? And it is only until you are free of fear that you are able to really enjoy life. And all those things that you think are dangerous, that can cause some harm, they actually become means of reflection and contemplation. And when you make them objects of contemplation, they serve their true purpose as ayat, as signs, as messages from the divine. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah says in the Quran, indeed, in the creation, in the structure, in the formation of the heavens and the earth, which means all that is in them as well, even spiders, sisters, and the change of night and day are messages, are proofs, are ayats for people whose innermost hearts are awakened. Literally, ulul albab, those who possess lub, core, those who possess an innermost heart. The lub, earlier today during our workshop on parenthood, we talked about the heart, didn't we? And the heart has levels. 5 levels to be exact that are mentioned in the Quran. And we won't go into them in detail, but I'll just mention their names. There's the sadr, there's the shaghaf, there is the qalb, there's fu'ad, and then there's the lub. The lub is the heart of your heart of your heart. It's your innermost heart. And the people who have awakened that part of their inner reality, they are able to see the message in this cup beyond its physical form. They're able to see the message in the spider or the scorpion or the night or the day, the darkness or the light that's beyond the physical reality, beyond the atoms and the molecules and the quarks, beyond the laws of thermodynamics. They're able to understand the message for them and take that message and derive the wisdom that's necessary for them to advance to higher and higher levels of consciousness, higher and higher levels of nearness to the divine, and greater service to our fellow creatures, be they plants, minerals, or animals, or human beings. And then grief or huzn or qalaq, it's also called in Arabic, this is what happens when we are attached and imprisoned by the past. So instead of being attached to what the unknown is in the future, the person is trapped in something they lost in the past. Or a trauma that occurred in the past. Maybe it was abuse, or maybe it was the failure to accomplish a goal, or maybe it was death of a loved one. But this grief, if we allow our sadness to consume us, it keeps us in the past, and we cannot appreciate the present moment. And the present moment is really all that you have. The hal, your hal, is the key. The present is the key to the divine presence. And these practices that we're talking about today, they help to cultivate your awareness of the divine presence. Now, in addition to this, we have prayer, the ritual prayer, and this cultivates humility. And humility is important to have a positive outlook on the world. And our first humility is with our Creator. Understanding that anything that happens to me is through the plan of God and ultimately for my benefit. So now that that's out of the way, let me ask for understanding of why I'm in this situation. Let me ask for understanding of why it's raining. Let me not waste my time complaining about how bad the weather is. Singing rain, rain, go away. That's what they used to teach us. I don't teach my children to sing that song. We want the rain to come. Because without the rain, we die. وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. God says in the Quran, and we have sent down from the heavens water that is pure and purified. مَاءً مُطْلَقًا. Water that revivifies and that brings us new life. And then we have zakat, which teaches us generosity. And it is rare that you will find someone that is generous that has a negative outlook on life, that is complaining about people or about events or situations or about the rain. And then we have siyam, so fasting. And fasting teaches us at-taqwa, restraint, protecting our soul. This wiqaya of the nafs. Fasting teaches us to delay gratifying the body. A seeker of truth, a seeker of a meaningful life, a seeker of surrender to the divine should perform at least once in their lives. And the Hajj, it cultivates rahmah and shafaqah. It cultivates love. But what kind of love is rahmah? It's different than mahabba or mawadda or haram. All of these, there's about 60 words for love in Arabic. The Arabs love love. And that's why they have so many words for it. Rahmah is the kind of love a mother feels for her child. It is a nurturing, protecting love that keeps giving, even when the child pinches the mother, or kicks the mother, or bites the mother. Rahmah keeps giving. And shafaqah is an empathy. It's a quality of seeing the world in someone else's shoes. And this is what Hajj cultivates in us. Is you're not just there to circumambulate the Kaaba and to run between Safa and Marwa and to go to Muzdalifah and Arafat and Ma'shar al-Haram and all the sites of the Haramain and to visit the Prophet ﷺ in Medina. You're not just there to go through these outward acts. You are there to cultivate virtue. And the cultivation of this virtue in our deen is not emphasized enough. We hear too many sermons and talks threatening us with hell and enticing us with heaven, about Jannah and Jahannam, and we're not taught that really what earns you Jannah and Jahannam, what makes a person deserving of hell and enables them to receive the grace of God that leads to Jannah, because you can't earn paradise. It's only through the rahmah of Allah Ta'ala that a person enters heaven. You can't work your way into heaven. Are the virtues in our heart or the vices in our heart that we spoke about earlier today? And so these rituals are a foundation. So let's go through them again. We have generosity, we have thankfulness or gratitude, humility, generosity, restraint, and love and empathy for others. When you perform the rituals of Islam with this in mind, you begin to see the world differently. Now, let's go to our next phase of preparing our hearts for raising our consciousness above the clouds. You must seek to establish 4 practices in the morning and the evening in your life, in addition to the 5 prayers that we do at the very minimum. Those of you who may not be Muslim know that Muslims don't only do 5 prayers a day. 5 prayers are the minimum. In fact, the Quran calls us to be prayerful all day. Those who are in those who regarding their prayers, da'imun. They are always in prayer. Ala salatihim da'imun. There are those who are always in prayer. When they're at work, at their job, you see them typing on the computer, they're in prayer. When you see them playing with their children in the park, they're in prayer. When you see them holding the hand of their husband or wife and looking into their eyes with affection, they're in prayer. Even when they are rebuking someone who has been unjust, even when they're standing up to injustice or standing up to an oppressor, they are in prayer. It doesn't matter what situation they're in. Because of those 5 minimum prayers, they are now taking the prayer with them everywhere they go. So these 4 practices, you must be added to the pillars. And our great scholars like Imam Abdullahi ibn Fodio, who was a great West African scholar and sage and statesman, wrote hundreds of books, lived in the 19th century. Scholars like Imam al-Ghazali and Imam al-Suyuti, Imam al-Ghazali who lived in what's now Iran, right, from Tus, and Imam al-Suyuti who lived in Egypt, they have all written about this extensively. And there are 4 practices that we need. My prayer is that one day there will be more mosques, more masajid that establish these than those who don't. But right now, most of them don't. And these 4 practices are, number 1, recitation of Quran. This we still do. But reciting Quran to get good deeds for every letter is different than the one who's reciting the Quran for healing. For the healing of their soul. It's different than the one who's reciting the Quran to, as Shaykh Ibrahim Inyas, great 20th century sage and scholar from Senegal, West Africa, who wrote in his tafsir, his commentary on the Quran, 6 volumes on the Quran. He said, whenever you recite the Quran, know that you have entered into the presence of God. And that saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, I seek refuge through God from Satan, the outcast, that is the purification of your tongue that must precede the presence. So it's not just something you're saying as that's mandub or that's mustahab before you recite Quran. There's a spiritual reality to saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, meaning that I'm purifying my tongue of the qualities of shaitan, of arrogance, of reciting out of arrogance or out of conceit or showing off, and on and on and on and on. This is what needs to be going through our hearts and minds. I'm not just reciting the Quran when someone is born, or when someone gets married, or when someone dies. Which is what a lot of our cultures, that's our relationship with the Quran. But the Quran is my door to getting above the clouds. The second practice is dhikr. We see a lot of Quran being recited in our mosques, but we don't see a lot of dhikr. And God says about dhikr in the Quran, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Indeed, it is through the remembrance of Allah, through the invocation of Allah, that hearts find serenity, that hearts find rest, that hearts find calm. And so the peace we are looking for, it comes by necessity through dhikr. But you can't just do a little dhikr. A lot of us Muslims, we do dhikr after the prayer, right, real quick. Right? Because we have to get back to work. Right? So we rush the prayer, we rush our wudu. I had the blessing of studying Islam in Nigeria and in Mauritania, and my teachers, when I would see them make wudu, they would take 5 minutes, 10 minutes for wudu. They did their wudu with love and attention. It wasn't just something they got out of the way so they could pray. Wudu itself was an act of worship. They would sit down, they would face the Qibla, and then they would, when I was in Nigeria, the elders, especially when they perform wudu, it looked like they were doing Tai Chi or something. Really. It was so beautiful. It wasn't like what we see in a lot of our masjids in our homes, all this. No, they took care. It was very slow. I saw Marabt al-Hajj with my own eyes, a great scholar in Mauritania, who's over 100 years old, still alive. He made wudu, it was so beautiful. And then you understand the hadith about isbagh al-wudu, what it means to perform wudu well. And when you perform wudu well, what does God say? What does the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? When you look up in the sky and then you say the shahada, the witnessing, the 8 gates of heaven open up for you. It was 10 minutes ago. It's still 10 minutes? 1 minute. Okay, shukran. We're talking about consciousness, and in consciousness there's no time. So dhikr is many times in the Quran followed by the adjective kathira. Udhkurullah dhikran kathira. It's the only act, spiritual practice, that you see this adjective accompany many, many, many times. Do dhikr abundantly. is not just enough to speed through subhanallah, 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 alhamdulillah, 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 alhamdulillah. Some of us just don't, we just, I don't know what we're doing. But we're not thinking about what we're saying. By doing dhikr, Imam al-Nawawi mentions in his book, Kitab al-Adhkar, the book of remembrances, that when you do dhikr, one of the etiquettes of dhikr is to reflect on the meaning of what you're saying. And you can't do that if you're just doing speed dhikr. The third is dua. Supplication. It is informal prayer. So we have the ritual canonical prayer where we stand, we bow, we sit, we prostrate, but then there's the informal prayer of dua, of supplication. And this, again, is an opportunity to attach the heart to that which is beyond time and space, Allah. It's not just an opportunity for you to ask for all the things you want. Sometimes we treat Allah Ta'ala like Santa Claus. Right? I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I worship you, I do my prayers, I wear my hijab, I do all these things, so you need to, I need help. The purpose of dua is not to get your dua answered. The purpose of supplication is tahqiq al-ubudiyya. It is that you express and manifest your need, your servanthood. Why? Because, again, that cultivates your soul. Because it removes the illusion that you are the captain of your ship and the master of your fate, which is what many of us have been taught in our schools, and by the media. But every time there's a tsunami, every time there's a so-called natural disaster, we realize we're not the captain of our ship. We're not the master of our fate. That there are realities beyond us that have impact on our lives. And then the last is fikr. It's reflection or contemplation. Sometimes I say meditation, but Muslims tend to be very suspicious of this word. Because meditation, no, that's what Buddhists and Hindus do. We don't do that. But fikr, whatever you want to call it, muraqabah, is part and parcel of the practice of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is how, according to many of our scholars, Islam began, as we know it. That he would go to the mountain of light, Jabal al-Nur, and he would go into a particular cave called Ghar Hira, which literally means the cave of high aspiration, or the cave of bewilderment. Hira, tahayyur, right? And he would go there for a month, sometimes. Yikana yatahannath. And he would turn away and rid himself of all kinds of idols. Physical idols and the mental idols. Emotional idols. This is what it means to be Hanif. To turn away from all idols. Anything that the mind makes absolute, but in fact is really just relative. That's what shirk is. So meditation is something that we need to revive in our lives. We need to revive in our masajid. And doing it the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to do it. Dhikr, whether you do it by yourself or in a group, whether you do it out loud or silently, needs to be revived. And the last practice I want to talk about with you today is what's called muhasabah. It is daily examination. It is taking a daily inventory every night before you go to sleep. Just like an accountant, does their books, right? You know, income, outgo, you balance the ledger, right? In order for the business or the home to be in the black, to run well, you yourself have to account. Especially if you're an accountant, you should be doing muhasabah. It should be a spiritual practice for each and every one of us. And this means that every day, and we were talking about parenthood earlier. With our children, it may not be at night. You can do muhasabah with your family when you eat together, when you have dinner together. You talk about the highlights of your day, and you show thankfulness. You look at the challenges of your day. Maybe moments during your day when you didn't respond the best way. You didn't respond like Austin. And when you reflect on those moments where you were at your best, you thank God. You say, Alhamdulillah. And when you reflect on those moments of your day where you didn't do your best, you say, Astaghfirullah, which literally means, oh God, cover me. Cover me. Cover my faults. And show my goodness. Imam al-Ghazali says this, that istighfar has these two dimensions. It is not only the forgiving and the covering of our bad deeds, but it is the expression and the unveiling of our good deeds. And then, in conclusion, when I was with Abu Sufyan earlier, and he asked me, what is the key to mindfulness? What is the key to fikr, to tafakkur? And really this applies to all of them, but we'll talk about fikr specifically. How do you reflect as a Muslim? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, first of all, that ayah that I recited earlier, it goes on to say about those ulul albab, those people who possess an innermost heart, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. Those who remember God, who invoke God, standing, sitting, and when they lie down. So whatever state they're in, they're always connected with the divine. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And they reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth. So these two must go together, dhikr and fikr. Tadakkur and tafakkur. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, reflect on the creation of Allah. Don't reflect on the essence of Allah, lest you perish. And so He Himself has ordered us to reflect on the signs of God around us. And so how do you do this? And there are many ways. There are many ways to do tafakkur. Muslims have been meditating and contemplating for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. There are many books about this. There's even videos on YouTube about this. But one of the most beneficial ways that I've seen, and that I think is the most significant in helping each and every one of us along our walk, our journey, is find a place in nature. It can either be a park, a city park, or even better, go outside, go to Malaysia. Right? And go to the woods or to the forest, to some place that's very natural, or go to a beach that doesn't have a lot of people. And you sit, close your eyes, and make the intention to just be with Allah. and be still. Now, if you're not used to doing this, you want to start with being still for 5 minutes. And then open your eyes so you don't have a panic attack. And then once you're used to being still with your eyes closed in a natural place for 5 minutes, then increase it to 10 minutes. Maybe the next month, you can start increasing it to 10 minutes. For at least 20 to 40 minutes. Just sitting still. You can either sit cross-legged on the ground, or you can sit in a chair, or sit on a rock. Just be comfortable. And sometimes close your eyes. Other times keep your eyes open, but focus on one thing. It might be an ant that's in front of you. It might be the ocean that's in front of you. It might be a tree or a bird. Whatever your heart is called to focus on that thing with your eyes open and ask Allah to teach you the ayah that's in that thing. And I found in my own life, the more and more I spend a quiet time reflecting on the signs of Allah, the more and more I spend doing dhikr, invoking Allah, the more and more time I spend doing a daily inventory, muhasabah, taking myself to account for my day, the good of it and the bad of it. It's the people who cut me off in traffic, they don't bother me as much. When my children disobey me, it doesn't bother me as much. When the people in the community backstab me, or spread rumors, or disappoint, it doesn't bother me as much. Because with these practices, you begin to see that no state is permanent. Everything's always changing. And it's always changing to teach you something. Walhamdulillah. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your comments and your questions. Jazakumullah khairan. May God reward you with abundant good.